front fender, put a big dent in the fender. And
wow.
We drove for, I don't know, maybe 15 miles. We stopped at a little store. We were talking to the guy and found out he was actually used to be an American citizen, but he didn't want to do Vietnam, so he moved to Canada. And we told him what we saw, and he goes, yeah, there has been some sightings of Bigfoot up here. And he was saying that they found a part of the remains of a human, maybe a couple weeks before that. They don't know if it was eaten from the bear or what it was, but he said there had been sightings of Bigfoot. And after I seen that, I became a believer. So the paranormal to me is real. Yeah. I mean, not everything in the paranormal is real, but once you run into something like that, it doesn't go away in your head. So it leaves your mind open a lot more than somebody has never seen something.
Well, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, you talk to anybody that's had an experience with that, no matter what it was Bigfoot or a ghost or an ET, whatever that was. I mean, there's nothing that's going to turn you into a believer faster than that kind of an experience. And that always fascinates the hell out of me, is people that have actually seen things like that. That had to be amazing. Did you get photos when you guys were out there? I mean, before it started to scream at you and chased you out of there, did you guys actually get some photos of the creature?
You know how many people, since I mentioned it on my radio show about a month ago about what happened? Yeah. Because I had a famous folk singer from Canada was on my show. And he was, he had an encounter with a Bigfoot, Ed did. And we were talking about it. And, he asked me the same thing. Well, did you guys take pictures? To be honest with you, when you have something scream at you, something that tall, the only thing, honestly, it was my mind was to get the hell out of there.
Well, of course, that's the fight or flight response right there. So you're just going to go, time to go. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
Oh, more than that. It was like run fast as you can,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was probably about the only time I ever peed my pants as an adult.
That's crazy. That's an amazing story, though. I can't imagine what it would be like to just, to lay eyes on something like that. I mean, I can. I had an experience that was very different from Bigfoot or anything like that. But, I've seen something that I could not explain, and that just, I can totally appreciate that, and it's like you say, so many people, they come out and they talk about it more, especially, as we connect via the internet and everything. You hear so many more stories that people were just afraid to tell at one point because they thought, well, nobody's going to believe this. And then they'll come out and then come on and on shows like yours, and they'll actually talk about the experience. And that really fascinates me.
Well, I think things started changing in the 90s where people started becoming more, open, like about UFOs or black-eyed children or even magic and stuff like that. I mean, people, the paranormal started opening around the 1990s. And then it seems like, honestly, in probably the last 5 years, it's really like it just totally has blossomed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. It just really, it come out and it's so ingrained in, everywhere, even in our pop culture now and everything. And there's been shows and, the very famous, I remember listening to a lot of shows like this and to probably one of the most famous ones, Art Bell, late overnights and things like that. And he would cover all these different topics like this and like you cover. And I've always loved to explore that and to listen to that and hear all those different tales. Anything that was dark mystery, I was all about it. And the public's very much about it now. That everybody really likes that. So I think you're right. Around the 90s, it really started to come to light like that. And I think even more so than it, because that was just before the internet. And as the internet really, became, such an influence, such a daily force in our lives, then everything just spread exponentially, faster and further.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And speaking about Art Bell, Heather Wade, who took over Art Bell's last show, She's going to be on my show here on the 15th. I do a Sunday show,
Really?
which is an hour long, and she was gracious enough to say she would come on my show. She's actually doing a thing on her show where she's trying to get a lot of her audience to go up to Area 51 and demand disclosure about UFOs and alien life and stuff like that. So that's going to be interesting, and she's going to be talking about that. So, I mean, that's what the internet has done. It's opened up everything.
Yes.
Even, I'm sure, even for what you do, I mean, you probably get a lot more people because the people are now into this. I mean, I mean, it's just night and day a change. I mean,
they find me from far and wide, whether it's on social media somewhere and it's on Facebook or Instagram or something like that, and they find my website at fitzgeraldrealm.com, and people will find me and then contact me and start following what I do, and it's really. Yeah, it is. It just opens things up where, no matter what it is that you're into now, even if it's a small kind of a niche, thing or like a small, fraction of something like that, people can still find you now. You can still gather, and then in larger things like this, people just gather in larger numbers, and it's really interesting to see everybody connect, and I'm always thankful when people are finding me and finding what I do and like it, because it's so different from what other people are doing, in magic and illusion and things like that. They, ever since I even performed at the Magic Castle, I remember even when I did that, I was doing this kind of a vampire illusion, up in the where I was performing in there, and there are magicians thanking me for doing something different, in there finally, that it was so different from what everybody else was doing and their kind of performances, that I had guys come up and thank me because they were tired of just seeing the same old kind of tired, traditional kind of formats of magic being presented again and again and again. And then, there was some of the older school, including the people who actually booked me there, that didn't really get quite where I was coming from and what I was doing, because it was not really their style or their cup of tea. So he didn't really get it, but he booked me anyway, which surprised the hell out of me. But so even amongst them, people were, happy to see something different. So yeah, it is. And I'm glad it seems to always be, gathering, more people, new people coming to it. And that quite frankly is one of the reasons I made Dark Realm. It was a way to go out on tour without actually going out on tour, because I could, it was almost in another way, it's like, so many people do an illusion special. In fact, my director, Vincent Blanchio, who, we met making a movie together, John Machago's movie called Blood Gnome. And I've done a couple of movies with John, including Magus and Blood Gnome and Bioslime. And but Vinny and I met on that, on Blood Gnome, and we've been friends ever since. And he's the director of the film, and his horror pedigree goes all the way back to Roger Corman's Sorority House Massacre. He's in that. Oh, and wow. So it's pretty amazing, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's really great. He does a lot of live theater and everything too. So he's a great performer. He understood the live stuff, and he understood the horror end, because he stars in so many things. He actually stars in Blood Gnome and so many others. So Vinny's my director, and he came to me and he said, let's shoot your show, because he just wanted to make kind of a basic, kind of video of the show. And I said, well, let's not just shoot the show. Let's make a movie out of it. And that's when the concept came together for, doing a horror narrative along with shooting the actual live performances. And I put up this really, different, blend of genres of live performance and horror came together, and which also makes it a bit of an art film in ways too. So that's when that came out. And the movie in its reviews gets a lot of high marks for being not your stereotypical horror movie that's out on the market right now, or that ever has been. There's never been anything in the worlds of illusion or horror. There's nobody else has ever really made anything quite like it. It draws on a tradition of movies like The Wizard of Gore by Herschel Gordon Lewis, or even The Mad Magician back in the 50s with Vincent Price. Even David Copperfield's in a horror movie called Terror Train from 1980. So there's a tradition of magic and horror together, but never before has it been all all of this real live performance from an actual Gothic illusionist coupled with a horror film narrative. That's completely new. So we get a lot of good marks for that and the style of illusions, and then even the music in it. You know, we've got a soundtrack that's out for it now that people can find on Amazon and Spotify and iTunes and other places, or even the music's getting high marks and people are getting named by, it's getting mentioned by name, some of the artists like Housemaid of Dawn or Voltaire in the reviews. So it's been so different, but that's why I put it together and made something that was different, where people can actually see it and just go online and see it, because it's on Amazon Prime Video. And so if they have Prime, they can watch it for free, and otherwise they can just go take a rental look at it and check it out. And please do, if you want to see something that's really different in the way of magic, you'll see it there. And find me on social or somewhere else and my website, and let me know what you think of it. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks of it. I'll leave a good review if you like it. But it's really cool, and that's why I made that. It was to take my style and really, really, couple it, marry it to the horror genre, and take it out as a horror film. So,
now, can you tell us a little about the movie without, tipping too much,
Of course.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it tells the narrative tells a story of a master illusionist with a deadly secret, and it takes you into that world that he's at, which is like a lot of dark mystery and horror, and and it's clearly it's based on me. It's not. It's not under my name. It's kind of in the performance end. It kind of emulates movies like David Bowie's, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, or even Prince and Purple Rain. Only, instead of Prince, you get a skinny white boy doing that's doing creepy illusions.
I will, to the fans of David, I just could never get, I loved his music, but I watched that movie so many times, and I still never could get it. It was something that I guess maybe I just didn't get it, but I guess that's just me.
It's fascinating. When he does Ziggy, when he does his character stuff, Bowie, it was almost like he was channeling that character, and he talks about that. He talked about that so much later in his life, where he got lost, just so lost in that character, and then there was the drug use on top of it, where he said, where Ziggy stopped and he began, they started to really blur that line. And that, although fascinating, and that's part of what makes that so interesting and so interesting to watch that film and those performances from back then. It's still, he just, from all accounts, he was really, fearful of losing himself. So that's when, he said he had to get out of America, he had to get out of LA, and he and Iggy Pop then, famously went off to stay in Berlin and start, clean up, and get off the drugs and start, a new leg of their careers, which, went great for both of them,
I think that,
but it's really fascinating, isn't it?
I think the problem is that movie was ahead of its time. And,
yes.
And maybe, that's why maybe I didn't quite understand it and grasp it. And, I've had some friends say the same thing. They couldn't grasp it, but that was back that time frame. So, I mean, I think it was probably about 20 years ahead of its time. I think if it
easily.
Was, I think it was redone now, it'd be awesome, at least to me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can go back and listen to so much of Bowie's catalog. And my favorite stuff is really that late 70s, the Berlin trilogy, and then Scary Monsters is my absolute favorite, and then even into the early 80s stuff. But you can go back and listen to so much of that. And that stuff, would sit fine against anything that's out there right now. Certainly any contemporary music, and it's better than a lot of it because so much of the contemporary music just seems to not have that kind of grit or thought behind it, and that in the productions are of course very different now. But I think so much of it does hold up so well because he was ahead of his time, and he did things too after the 80s, through the 90s and even into the early 2000s before he retired from performing. he was still cranking out some amazing music and things that were thematically really dark, and they're great. They're fun to listen to. I'm a huge Bowie fan. I mean, he